Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join me as we explore Southwest's lost historical characters, stunning desert vistas, forgotten Native American history, or tales of lost gold mines. There's always something new to discover. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Southwest Desert. Today, we're delving into a captivating tale that blends historical fact with tantalizing legend, the story of Emperor Maximilian's lost treasure. Prepare for a journey that will take us from the opulent halls of Mexico City to the rugged terrain of Texas, where a fortune fit for an emperor may still lie hidden beneath the desert sands. Our story begins in the tumultuous 1860s, a time of great change and upheaval in North America. While the United States was embroiled in its Civil War, another drama was unfolding south of the border in Mexico. In 1864, a young Austrian archduke named Maximilian arrived in Mexico City to assume the throne of the newly created Second Mexican Empire. Maximilian was no ordinary ruler. He was a member of the powerful Habsburg dynasty, and his ascension to the Mexican throne was orchestrated by none other than Napoleon III of France. The French emperor had grand designs for Mexico, hoping to establish a European-style monarchy that would serve as a counterweight to the growing influence of the United States. When Maximilian arrived in Mexico, he brought with him all the trappings of European royalty. Visitors to Chapultepec Castle in Mexico City can still marvel at some of the relics of his brief reign: a gold-encrusted carriage, a canopied bed fit for a king, and a smattering of jewels and precious metalwork. But these remnants pale in comparison to the legendary fortune that Maximilian is said to have brought with him from Austria. As with many great treasure tales, the story of Maximilian's lost fortune is a mix of historical fact and imaginative speculation. According to the legend that has persisted for over 150 years, the emperor was not blind to the precarious nature of his position. Mexico was a nation divided, with many citizens fiercely opposed to foreign rule. By 1866, just 2 years into his reign, Maximilian allegedly began to sense that his grand imperial experiment was doomed to failure. It was in this atmosphere of impending doom that our tale takes a dramatic turn. The legend speaks of a secret mission, launched under the cover of darkness from Chapultepec Castle. There were 15 heavily laden ox carts, their contents hidden beneath canvas covers, creaking through the silent streets of Mexico City. At the head of this mysterious caravan rode 4 Austrian noblemen, trusted confidants of the emperor himself. Guarding the procession were 15 Mexican laborers, sworn to secrecy about their cargo and their mission. The caravan's destination was not merely the edge of the empire, but beyond, into the vast and dangerous territory of Texas. At the time, the border between the United States and Mexico was a lawless frontier, a haven for desperate men from both sides. Confederate soldiers, disillusioned with their defeat in the Civil War, were fleeing south. Meanwhile, Mexicans who had allied themselves too closely with the French-backed regime were seeking refuge in the north. It was in this chaotic borderland that the emperor's treasure caravan arrived at Presidio del Norte, a small outpost straddling the Rio Grande. Here, fate would introduce new players into our unfolding drama: 6 former Confederate soldiers from Missouri, hardened by war and seeking their fortunes in the West. The leader of the Austrian contingent, careful to maintain the secrecy of his mission, approached these battle-worn Americans with a proposition. He spun a tale of a valuable shipment of flour bound for San Antonio and offered a handsome reward for their protection on the perilous journey across the Texas plains. Little did the Austrians know that this chance encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would lead to bloodshed, betrayal, and the birth of one of the Southwest's most enduring treasure legends. For several days, the enlarged caravan made its way across the rugged Texas landscape. The ex-Confederates, now serving as scouts and outriders, couldn't help but notice the tight security surrounding the supposedly mundane cargo of flour. Their curiosity piqued, they hatched a plan to uncover the truth. Under cover of night, one of the Missourians managed to slip past the watchful guards and peek beneath the canvas coverings. What he discovered must have taken his breath away. Instead of sacks of flour, the carts were laden with glittering treasure. Gold coins, ornate silver plates, and chests brimming with jewels filled the wagons from end to end. In that moment, standing amid a king's ransom under the star-filled Texas sky, a fateful decision was made. The ex-Confederates, their minds clouded by visions of unimaginable wealth, plotted to seize the treasure for themselves. The caravan had nearly reached the Pecos River when the Missourians chose to strike. They selected a spot known as Castle Gap, about 15 miles east of the Horsehead crossing on the Pecos. Here, amidst the stark beauty of the Texas wilderness, a horrific act of betrayal would unfold. As the weary travelers settled in for the night, the ex-Confederates launched their attack. In a brutal and swift assault, they fell upon the sleeping Austrians and Mexican laborers. When the dust settled, 19 men lay dead, the 4 Austrian noblemen and the 15 peons who had guarded the treasure since leaving Mexico City. But the night's grim work was not yet done. The 6 Missourians, now sole possessors of an emperor's fortune, faced a daunting challenge. How could they possibly transport such an enormous treasure across hostile territory with only 6 men to guard it? After a hurried conference, the conspirators came to a chilling decision. They would bury the bulk of the treasure here at Castle Gap, taking only what they could easily carry. They would then seek help from trusted friends to return and recover the rest of the fortune when conditions were more favorable. And so, under the cold light of the Texas moon, the killers turned gravediggers. They dug a deep pit in the sandy soil, then began the gruesome task of concealing their crime. Into the hole went cartload after cartload of precious metals and jewels. Atop this gleaming hoard, they callously dumped the bodies of their 19 victims. But the Missourians were not content with a simple burial. To further disguise their grisly work, they piled the wooden carts, harnesses, and canvas coverings atop the grave and set the whole mass ablaze. When the flames died down, all that remained was a scorched patch of earth, indistinguishable from countless other campfires that dotted the Texas plains. With their bloody work complete, the 6 men filled their saddlebags with as much gold as they could carry and set off towards San Antonio, leaving behind a king's ransom and 19 silent guardians. But fate, it seems, was not done playing its cruel tricks on those who sought to possess Maximilian's treasure. As the small band of thieves made their way east, one of their number fell ill. Unable to keep up with his companions, he agreed to meet them later in San Antonio when his health improved. This twist of fate would prove to be his salvation and his curse. For when the lone Missourian finally recovered enough to resume his journey, he stumbled upon a horrific scene. The mutilated bodies of his 5 companions lay strewn across the trail, victims of bandits or Native Americans who had killed them for the gold they carried. In a stroke, the sick man had become the sole living person who knew the location of the buried treasure. But his troubles were far from over. Weak and alone, he struggled across the dangerous landscape, evading hostile natives and desperate outlaws. In a final ironic turn, The last guardian of Maximilian's treasure found himself in the company of horse thieves. When a sheriff's posse swooped down on the camp, the Missourian was thrown into jail along with the genuine criminals. It was here, behind bars, that the full weight of his ordeal finally caught up with him. Gravely ill, he called for a doctor and a lawyer. The physician delivered grim news. The Missourian's condition was terminal, with only weeks or months to live. Facing his own mortality, the last survivor of the Castle Gap massacre made a fateful decision. He drew up a rough map showing the location of the buried treasure and entrusted it to the lawyer and doctor who had come to his aid. With this final act, the secret of Maximilian's lost fortune passed into new hands. Years passed before the doctor and lawyer were able to act on the information they had been given. By the time they finally made their way to Castle Gap, the landscape had been transformed. The lake that had once served as a landmark had dried up, and wind-blown sand had reshaped the terrain. Despite their best efforts, the two men were unable to locate any of the reference points mentioned in the ex-Confederates' crude map. They returned home empty-handed, leaving behind them a mystery that persists to this day. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our tale, but perhaps not the end of the story. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of the Texas desert, a fortune fit for an emperor may still lie buried. 19 skeletons, the silent victims of greed and betrayal, keep their eternal watch over gold coins, silver plate, and chests of priceless jewels. Is the story of Maximilian's lost treasure merely a legend, a campfire tale spun by imaginative frontiersmen, or does a real fortune await discovery, hidden beneath the shifting sands of Castle Gap? The truth, like the treasure itself, remains elusive. As we close this episode of Southwest Desert, we leave you with a tantalizing question. Could you be the one to solve the mystery of Maximilian's lost treasure? Until next time, keep your ears open and your shovels ready. You never know what secrets history might be waiting to reveal. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for more lost gold and treasure tales. If you would like to help support my channel and time, hit the super thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. Relax and enjoy. Today, we're diving into a captivating legend that has persisted for centuries, the lost treasure of Delbach. This is a story of Jesuit missionaries, Native American tribes, and a silver mine that may hold the key to a fortune. So sit back, relax, and let's journey to the sun-baked lands of southern Arizona. Our story begins in the year 1700 at a place called San Xavier del Bac. Located on the west bank of the Santa Cruz River, just a few miles south of what is now Tucson, Arizona, this site would become home to one of the most beautiful and enduring missions in the American Southwest. On April 28th of that year, a Jesuit priest named Father Eusebio Francisco Quino wrote in his diary, "We laid the foundation of a very large and spacious church." Little did Father Quino know that this simple act would set in motion a chain of events that would lead to one of the most enduring mysteries in the region. As the foundation was laid and construction began in earnest, something unexpected happened. The headmen of the local Papago tribe approached Father Quino with an intriguing proposition. They wanted to show him something valuable hidden in the nearby mountains. Father Quino followed these tribal leaders into the rugged terrain southwest of Bac. After a journey of about 2 leagues, roughly 6 miles, they arrived at their destination. There, before Father Kino's eyes, was a sight that would change the course of the mission's history: a rich vein of silver ore. The story goes that Father Kino was delighted by what he saw. The ore had a distinctive green color, characteristic of horn silver. Impressed by its appearance, Kino dubbed the site La Esmeralda, the Emerald. Without hesitation, he made arrangements to begin mining operations immediately. In the days that followed, the rich ore was extracted from La Esmeralda and transported to the mission on the backs of Native American workers. At the mission, a small adobe furnace was constructed for smelting the silver. It seemed that San Xavier del Bac was on its way to becoming not just a spiritual center, but a source of significant wealth as well. However, the story of La Esmeralda and its silver was just beginning. Father Kino passed away on March 15, 1711 in Magdalena, Sonora, where his remains still rest in the ruins of the old church. With his death, the missions he had established entered a turbulent period. The years following Kino's death were marked by minor revolts and constant attacks from Apache tribes. Despite these challenges, the mission at San Xavier del Bac continued to prosper. By 1723, the treasure and silver ornaments adorning the altar were estimated to be worth more than 120,000 pesos, a fortune by the standards of the time. But trouble was brewing. In that same year, 1723, the first major revolt of the Papago and Pima tribes erupted. As chaos descended upon the mission, a group of loyal Papago neophytes took matters into their own hands. In a daring move, they secretly carried the treasure from the altar to the Esmeralda mine and buried it deep within its underground workings. This act of preservation came just in time. The revolt left the churches at Bac, Tumacacori, and Guavavi partially destroyed and without spiritual advisors. For years, the mission stood silent, their treasures hidden away in the depths of the earth. But the story of San Xavier del Bac was far from over. In 1731, a small group of Jesuit reinforcements arrived in the area. Two of these priests, Father Felipe Segesser and Father Juan Baptista Grasshoffer, established what are considered the first Spanish settlements in Arizona. Father Segesser took charge of San Xavier del Bac, while Father Grasshoffer oversaw San Miguel de Guavavi. For the next 2 decades, a succession of Jesuit priests tended to the mission at San Xavier del Bac. They found that many of the native settlements from Kino's time had been abandoned, but they persevered in their efforts to rebuild and maintain the mission. However, peace was short-lived. In 1751, a second revolt of the Pima tribes shook the region. This time, the violence was even more severe. 3 priests, Francisco Xavier Saeta, Thomas Rollo, and Enrique Ruin, lost their lives. The missions at Sonoita and Caborca were completely destroyed, while Guavavi, Tumacacori, and San Xavier del Bac were damaged and abandoned by all but a few loyal followers. It wasn't until 1754 that the native tribes returned to their pueblos, expressing a desire to live peacefully once again. With this newfound peace came a momentous event. The great treasure was brought out of hiding from the Esmeralda mine and returned to its place on the altar of San Xavier del Bac. For the next decade or so, San Xavier del Bac experienced a golden age. The mission prospered greatly from agriculture, mining, and stock raising. It became one of the most flourishing outposts in the long chain of missions established during Kino's time. But as we've seen throughout this tale, times of prosperity were often followed by periods of turmoil. In 1767, King Charles of Spain issued a decree that would once again throw the missions into chaos. His edict expelled all members of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, from Spain and its possessions. The Jesuits accepted their expulsion with dignity. Before departing, they took steps to protect the wealth they had accumulated. They sealed the mines and buried their treasures, then made their way to the coast where ships waited to carry them away from the land they had called home for so long. In the wake of the Jesuits' departure, and before the arrival of the Franciscans who were to replace them, many of the missions fell into ruin. San Xavier del Bac was partially destroyed, but it was never completely abandoned. The Papago people, who had come to love the beautiful mission, continued to care for it as best they could. The next chapter in the story of San Xavier del Bac began in 1783, when Padre Carrillo laid the foundations for a new church, the very structure that still stands today, noted for its beautiful mission architecture and still in sacred use. But the tumultuous history of the region wasn't finished yet. In 1822, the fall of the colonial government led to the departure of the Franciscans. San Xavier del Bac and the Esmeralda mine were placed under the care of a secular priest from Magdalena by the Bishop of Sonora. It's a testament to the dedication of the Papago people that despite all these changes, the church and its treasures remained largely intact. When the region was added to the Diocese of New Mexico under Bishop Lamy in 1859, San Xavier del Bac stood as the only mission in the long chain that wasn't in ruins. The arrival of a new priest was met with joy by the Papago. They rang the church bells in celebration, and many still remembered their prayers. Some could even sing at Mass. Most importantly, the articles for the altar, including, presumably, the silver treasures, were once again brought out from their hiding place. In 1860, American miners operating in the area reported seeing the treasure on the altar at San Xavier del Bac. They estimated its value at more than $60,000, an enormous sum for the time. But once again, conflict would disrupt the peace. In 1861, with the outbreak of the American Civil War, soldiers were withdrawn from Arizona to fight in the East. The Apaches seized this opportunity to resume their raids on small mines and ranches, and once again, the great treasure of San Xavier del Bac disappeared. So, what became of this fabled treasure? According to tradition among the local Native Americans, the silver still lies buried deep within the old workings of the Esmeralda mine. They say it rests at the bottom of a large stope that has since caved in, buried under hundreds of tons of rock and earth. But the story doesn't end there. Every year, just before the Feast of San Juan on June 24th, something curious happened. The amount of rich silver ore brought to buyers in Tucson and Nogales showed a marked increase. Most of the silver came from 2 or 3 elderly Papago men who lived near the mission on the banks of the Santa Cruz River. Many old-time Mexican residents of Tucson believed this ore came from the dump and shallow surface workings of the lost Esmeralda mine. It's widely understood in the area that many of the older Papago knew the location of the mine and its treasure, but they steadfastly refused to disclose this information to anyone outside their tribe. And so, the mystery of the lost treasure of Del Bac persists to this day. Is there really a fortune in silver hidden somewhere in the mountains near Tucson? Do the Papago elders truly hold the secret to its location? Or is this simply a colorful legend, born from the dramatic history of this beautiful old mission? Whatever the truth may be, the story of San Xavier del Bac and the Esmeralda mine serves as a powerful reminder of the complex history of the American Southwest. It speaks to the intertwining of cultures, Spanish, Native American, and later American, and the enduring impact of the mission system on the region. As you walk the grounds of San Xavier del Bac today, gazing up at its beautiful white towers against the azure Arizona sky, it's hard not to wonder about the secrets it might still hold. Perhaps somewhere in the rugged landscape nearby, the lost silver of La Esmeralda still waits to be rediscovered. This has been the Southwest Desert. I'm your host, Alan, thanking you for joining us on this journey into the legends of the Southwest. Remember, sometimes the most fascinating stories are hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for someone curious enough to uncover them. Until next time, keep exploring, and who knows what treasures you might find. Happy trails. Welcome to the Southwest Desert, the channel that uncovers the mysteries of history and lost gold legends. Today, we're delving into a tale that has captivated prospectors and treasure hunters for nearly a century, the story of Tim Cody's Lost Ledge Mine. In 1908, the rugged landscape of Nevada is teeming with prospectors, all hoping to strike it rich. Among them is an Irish immigrant named Tim Cody, a man whose incredible discovery and subsequent loss would become the stuff of legend. Tim Cody wasn't your typical prospector. In fact, some might say he lacked one of the most crucial skills for the job, a good sense of direction. But what he lacked in navigational prowess, he made up for with determination and a genuine love for the hunt. Our story begins near Stewart Springs, about 20 miles northeast of Mena, Nevada. Cody, a big, raw-boned man, was in his 40s at the time. He'd been working the mines, saving up just enough for supplies before heading back out into the hills, driven by the promise of that next big strike. One fateful day, Cody decided to make the 15-mile trek from his camp to the mining town of Gold Dyke. Maybe he was running low on supplies, or perhaps he just needed some company. Whatever the reason, he set out with only a small amount of water and no food, confident he'd reach his destination in a matter of hours. But fate had other plans for Tim Cody that day. As he crossed the ancient, eroded lake bed that lay between him and Gold Dyke, something went wrong. Cody, true to form, lost his way. He wandered throughout the day, growing increasingly disoriented as the hours ticked by. As night began to fall, Cody found himself at the foot of a small hill, or knoll as they're often called in that part of Nevada. This particular knoll was crowned with gnarled juniper trees, also known as desert cedars. Hoping to get his bearings, Cody made his way to the top. From his vantage point, Cody could see two distinct landmarks, Paradise Peak to the north and east, and the Black Pyramid of Pilot Cone to the west. Finally able to orient himself, Cody sat down to rest, likely feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. As Cody lit his pipe and looked down at his feet, his life changed forever. There, scattered all around him, was white quartz stained with iron, a telltale sign that gold might be nearby. With trembling hands, Cody picked up a piece and broke it open. What he saw made his heart race. The freshly broken surface was rich with free gold, gold so plentiful that Cody could see it with his naked eyes, even in the fading light. Overcome with excitement, he dropped to his knees and began breaking open more pieces of quartz. Each one contained gold. Tim Cody knew he had stumbled upon something extraordinary, but he also knew that in the gathering darkness he couldn't properly assess or document his find. He needed to mark the spot so he could return. In his excitement, Cody didn't think to build a fire or create a more permanent marker. Instead, he took his prospecting pick and began chopping at the nearest juniper tree, leaving deep cuts and scars that he was sure he'd recognize later. With the tree marked and his pockets full of gold-laden quartz, Cody set out once again for Gold Dyke. But here's where the story takes a tragic turn. In his own words, he seemed to kind of go blind. For 3 days, Cody wandered in a daze, unable to find his way. When he finally came to his senses, he found himself at the abandoned Pactolus mine, less than 10 miles from where he had started at Stewart Springs. Dehydrated and starving, Cody's only thoughts were of water and food. Luckily, he found both at the old mine, some water left behind in a dugout and flour that the rats had gotten into. But Cody was beyond caring about the quality of the food. He wolfed it down gratefully. After resting and regaining his strength, Cody made his way to Gold Dyke without further incident. From there, he returned to his camp at Stewart Springs, keeping an eye out for the juniper-crowned knoll along the way. But he couldn't find it. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Tim Cody had no idea where his wanderings had taken him during those 4 days. All he knew was that somewhere in the vast expanse he had covered, there was a juniper-topped knoll from which you could see both Paradise Peak and Pilot Cone, and on that knoll lay a fortune in gold, just waiting to be claimed. Convinced he could relocate his incredible find, Cody headed into Mina to show off his specimens. Whether he was hoping to secure a grub stake or simply couldn't contain his excitement, Cody's gold-rich quartz created quite a stir. He managed to finance another expedition and returned to Stewart Springs, determined to find his lost ledge. For an entire year, Tim Cody searched. He scoured the area, checking every juniper-topped knoll he could find. But the elusive gold deposit remained hidden. As the years passed, Cody's lost ledge became the stuff of legend. He continued to talk about it until his death in the early 1930s, never losing hope that he might one day relocate his incredible find. Even on his deathbed in the hospital at Hawthorne, Nevada, Cody was still thinking about his lost gold. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing. You see, Tim Cody wasn't the only one to find tantalizing evidence of this rich gold deposit. Around 1915, 2 men named Bill Robinson and Bert Whitney were prospecting in the area. Just over the summit of a small hill, about 3/4 of a mile from Stewart Springs, they found a piece of float, a fragment of rock that's been separated from its original source. This wasn't just any old rock. It was white, iron-stained quartz, rich in free gold, eerily similar to the ore Tim Cody had described. Robinson and Whitney searched extensively but couldn't locate the source of this tantalizing piece of float. Was it from Cody's lost ledge? As with many tales of lost mines and hidden treasures, Cody's story has its skeptics, but there are also many who believe in the existence of this elusive gold deposit. Carl E. Sullivan, who later became a county commissioner of Mineral County, knew Tim Cody well. He was the one who brought Cody's body back from Hawthorne and buried him in the cemetery at Mina. Sullivan had this to say about Cody and his lost ledge. "I liked the old fellow, liked him fine, and I believe he really found the gold there, and I don't think it was more than 2 or 3 miles from Stewart Springs." Sullivan's belief isn't without foundation. The area around Stewart Springs is known gold country. 2 gold mines, the Warrior and the Omco, operated nearby. But neither of these mines matches the description of Cody's lost ledge. The gold in these established mines is so finely divided that it's not visible to the naked eye. If you get one color in a pan, the ore will run about $15 a ton, and you have to grind it to 200 mesh to save the values. This stands in stark contrast to the gold-rich quartz that Cody described, or so rich that the gold was clearly visible. In the years since Cody's death, many have tried to retrace his steps and locate the lost ledge. They've combed the area, checking every juniper-topped knoll, hoping to spot the scarred tree that Cody marked all those years ago. But the search has been in vain. Just before he died, Cody shared a final thought with Carl Sullivan. He said, "I think all the time I was looking too low down." Was Cody referring to elevation? Did he mean he had been searching too far south? Or was this simply the rambling of an old prospector still dreaming of his lost gold? The story of Tim Cody's Lost Ledge Mine is more than just a tale of lost riches. It's a testament to the enduring allure of the prospector's life, the thrill of the hunt, the dream of striking it rich, and the cruel twists of fate that can turn triumph into tragedy in the blink of an eye. It's also a reminder of the vast, unforgiving nature of the Nevada wilderness. In those rugged hills where junipers crown countless knolls and the landscape can seem unchanging for miles, it's all too easy for landmarks to blur together, for direction to be lost, for a life-changing discovery to slip through one's fingers. As Carl Sullivan put it, Tim's gold is still out there, but there are just too many knolls with juniper on them. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? To think that somewhere out there, perhaps just a few miles from Stewart Springs, a fortune in gold might still be waiting, hidden beneath the roots of a gnarled old juniper tree. This has been the Southwest Desert. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to solve the mystery of the lost ledge mine. Happy trails. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.